Hello and welcome to the Slingshot Channel. This is episode number 1 of a total series of 3 videos about these 8 D2 knives from my sponsor GearBest in China. The first episode will be about simply presenting these knives, and then we will move over to devising a clever test apparatus, and then in the last stage we will test the heck out of these things. But let me tell you about D2 steel first. D2 is very much an industrial steel. You know, in the industry, when you need to cut something made from steel, you use D2 tools. Therefore, it is a steel that is made to cut other types of steel. I find this really intriguing. So this is not a steel that is recommended for like your home forge, because you really have to use just the right temperature for all the steps in the production process. So you can never do this with a charcoal forge. Therefore, this has to be industrial. It is very hard. I mean, you can harden it to about 62 HC, although these blades are hardened to about 60 HC, which is still very, very hard. D2 steel can really be used for knives, but not really for long knives, because it's so hard that a longer blade, when you try to pry or something, do something like that with it, will snap. But for a folder, I think it's really the right steel. It is also not completely stainless, but it is somehow slow to corrode, because it has a very high amount of chromium. So even though you have a lot of carbon inside, that's why it's so hard, it will not rust overnight. You still need to treat it with a little bit of respect and oil it every now and then. Other than that, I think it is really, really cool steel for knives, although it's usually quite expensive. Not so when you buy it from GearBest though, because these D2 knives range from just 13 euros for the cheapest model to about 29 euros for the most expensive models, but those feature titanium scales. So it's an incredible amount of value for the money. The first model I'm showing to you is the CTS Smart D2. It actually flicks open very easily, like that. And as you see, it has a brushed blade, which I find really pretty. I think the shape of the knife is super elegant, and it really sits truly well in the hand. And I like that the little flick lever here is also a finger rest, so that you can really stab with this thing. And of course, like all of the knives that I got from them, it's super sharp. I mean, you can really shave with this thing if you wanted to. Probably not going to be as sharp when we're finished with it though. CTS Smart, very cool knife. Most of the knives, by the way, that I'm presenting to you today can be had in several colors. So this color I think is also quite nice. I like how translucent it is, and also the titanium or titanium covered metal parts here, I think, pop out really well in this color. So even, so if one color is sold out, then maybe just see if the other colors are still available. Often they are. Next one is a Fura gear one. Fura actually has made most of the test objects in this review. And again, it flicks open with this lever that also is your finger guard. It really is perfect for my hand, even though my hand is quite meaty, as you see. I like the blade shape. It's kind of very nice for carving and so on, but it's also certainly not a bad knife in a self-defense situation. And of course, titanium scales, really valuable, but it costs just under 29 euros. A major steal for this kind of steel. So a steal of a steal. This next one is a little bit special because it actually reminds me a little too much of a famous Pachenko design, but I think it looks pretty much identical. But since it also has a lot of differences, I decided to also include it in the review, because the original Pachenko one is very expensive, yet this one here doesn't have that kind of patented lock. It's a non-locking knife, and therefore it is really interesting for the European markets, including the German market, where locking knives cannot be carried in public. Well, this one, since it's a one-hand opener, so even though it doesn't lock, it still is quite solid in the open position. So I don't think that it will happen very often that you accidentally close it. Of course, it's not as safe as a locking knife, but the law is the law. Well, there's nothing to be done about that. In any case, I think it's a beautiful knife. I also like that it has this extra finger position here, so you can also hold it like that, and then I don't think that you can accidentally close it, because you're really holding it by the blade rather than by the handle. And also I like that it's very inexpensive. D2 steel, this great design, legally to be carried in Germany for under 15 euros. You know, when I got the package from GearBest, I thought that they forgot one knife, because there was one with titanium scales and D2 blade and so on that I didn't find. But then in the end, when everything else was taken out of the box, I found it. It's this one. It sure is a lot smaller than I thought. I think it's actually more looks like a toy knife, but believe me, it is very sharp, and it has D2 steel blade and titanium scales. So even though it's really, really cute, it is a serious knife. And certainly in an emergency situation, much better than nothing. It doesn't have a clip, but I don't think that you need one. You simply put it in the watch pocket of your jeans. And in any way, it also has a lock, which probably makes it illegal to carry in Germany. But then again, I think I read something about if the blade length is shorter than, I think like 4 centimeters and so on, you can't carry it. Well, this has a very short blade. So who knows, maybe it's even legal to carry in other ways. Yeah, I think it's really intriguing. It's just under 16 euros, which is a lot for such a small knife. But don't forget, it's D2 steel. Next one is this one. It's also a Fura gear. Again, it has a D2 blade, but it costs 13 euros. I think it's actually amazing how they can do it. And I know that you're going to say child labor and so on. I disagree, because, you know, if you would buy the steel in Germany, probably the steel alone would cost you more than this. So I'm not sure how it's done, but probably the steel is a lot cheaper in China. Must be. In any case, this has an almost straight edge. It's just a little bit curved. And that is, of course, practical for a lot of cutting applications. So this is not so much of a combat knife, although it really sits well in the hand. And I like the finger groove, the index finger groove that you have here, because it gives you a solid handle. It's really you could get a lot of purchase on this thing. And it is a liner lock, of course, like most of the knives in the test series. This next one is again a Fura gear knife, and I think it is my favorite of the entire test series. Because, first of all, I love the blade shape, and it also has a small index finger groove, so it sits fantastic in my hand, just perfect, just like custom made for me. Titanium scales, very, very solid liner lock, but the best thing is of course, is the ball bearing on the blade. I think that a lot of the other knives have ball bearings too, but this one certainly. I mean, look at that. Look at that. See? Gravity closes the knife. And there's almost no play. Actually, I think there's zero play in the mechanism. So this is a fantastic knife, and it's still for just under 29 euros. It's amazing. You get a ball bearing knife with titanium scales, D2 blade. So this clearly, I think, is my favorite. But this one is very close. I mean, I think it also has a ball bearing, although this one, yeah, it's a little bit not as light as the other one, but it's still very, very smooth. So, the blade shape is also interesting. It's more like a cutting knife, a utility knife, not so much for fighting. So for a lot of applications, this will be the better knife. Still, I prefer the other one. Even though, of course, titanium scales, D2 steel, under 29 euros. Great knife. So this is an R. Charlans knife. I hope that I'm pronouncing the manufacturer all right. And it is, I think, my second most favorite knives of the series. I love how big it is. Really, really beautiful Mikata handles. And it is the only one in the series that is actually an axis lock and not a liner lock. But it is, I think it's also the biggest knife in the entire series. That makes it really nice to hold. I love the elegant drop point blade here. The axis lock, what I like is that it has a lot of reserve for future wear. So this means that even if you use it for a long time, axis lock will wear down over time. But there's so much reserve that I think in a whole lifetime you won't be able to make this lose. And of course also it has this super light motion that you can only get with the ball bearing knife. Really, really cool. And the best thing about it, it doesn't even cost 15 euros. Amazing. So, 8 D2 knives. In the next episode, coming up in a few days from now, we will devise a test machine that will test them against the most brutal opponent, steel. Stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed this, because that's it for today. Thanks and bye bye.